Imagine working decades and only getting coffee money returns because you picked the wrong stocks and chased thrills. In this video, I'll show you 6 deadly habits that keep investors broke and how you can avoid them to make your money compound for real. Number 1. They are picking stocks that are past their growth phase. Many of these stocks, such as Intel, Disney, and Johnson & Johnson, used to be the darlings of the investment world, but in recent years, they have become stuck. Many of these companies have a lot of cash, but lack ideas on how to use it to bring in more returns for the company. Instead, these companies often pay higher dividends. However, you are not going to get rich from buying a stock at the top and waiting for dividends. If you plan to pick individual stocks, the growth phase is where the real money is made. Right now, the so-called Magnificent Seven, including Microsoft, Google, Nvidia, etc., are still growing and could double or triple over the next 5 years. But here's the kicker. Stocks in a true growth phase can do far more, 5 times, 10 times, or even bigger in that same amount of time. For example, in 1998, during one of Amazon's growth years, it returned more than 9 times your money in a single year, and then doubled in several subsequent years. Same thing with Tesla. In 2020, some investors saw about 7-fold gains. That's what growth can look like. That said, growth investing comes with rules. It's generally safer to buy after a company starts turning a profit and be ready for a wild ride. These stocks aren't for the faint-hearted. One year it could double, the next year it could be down 50%. Big upside, big swings. To learn more about how to find and invest in stocks in their growth phase, make sure you are subscribed and watch my next video. Another reason many investors don't make money in the stock market is that they are investing their coffee money. The truth is that investing a lump sum of money yields better returns. Now imagine this. You put $5 every week, the price of a cup of coffee, into the stock market. That's $260 a year. Even if your money grows at an amazing 10% per year, after 20 years, you'll only have about $14,000. Not bad, but that's not life-changing wealth. But let's flip the script. What if instead of just coffee money, you invest $25,000 every year? At the same 10% annual return, after 20 years, you'd have over $1.4 million. That's the difference capital makes. Here's the truth. Returns are always proportional to your capital. If your portfolio grows by 10%, it doesn't matter whether you have $1,000 or $100,000 invested. 10% is 10%. The difference is the outcome. 10% of $1,000 equals $100. 10% of $100,000 equals $10,000. Same growth rate, but one makes you pocket change and the other makes you real money. Reason number 3. They are trying to beat the average return. One of the biggest secrets of the stock market is that an average return could be an excellent return. Here's the thing. Average return can feel boring until time does its magic. Over the past 7 decades, the S&P 500, let's call it Mr. Market, has averaged about 10% a year in the U.S., and that steady compound power turns average into something extraordinary if you give it time. The NASDAQ 100 has done even better, returning 14% per year since it was created. Now get this, roughly 90% of professional money managers don't beat the market. Yep, the folks with fancy degrees and big offices. That means the market's average return sits in the top 10% of all active investors. When you're in the top 10% at anything, people call you elite. But Mr. Market? He's just called average. People pay professionals huge sums for lousy returns. Mr. Market is never going to charge you. This is why Warren Buffett advised the average investor to put their money into the S&P 500 and forget about it for several years. If you decide to pick individual stocks, then you must be ready to put in the hours doing the research and reading company annual statements. And then the odds are still against you. To beat the market as an individual, you need to be psychologically prepared, be ready for several years of boredom, be ready to admit when you are wrong, be ready to go against the crowd at the right time, be ready to put in a lot of time to understand the companies that you invest in, and many more. There are a lot of individual investors doing great, but you have to ask yourself if you are truly one of them. If most of the previous qualities mentioned don't sound like you, then your best bet is to invest in an index fund like the S&P 500, NASDAQ, or Dow Jones. Which is not bad after all, because you will be making an excellent return compared to most other investors. So maybe we all owe Mr. Market an apology for underestimating him. Slow, boring, and consistent beats flashy a lot more often than people think. Number 4. They think investing has to be exciting. If you want to make money in the stock market, you have to be willing to tolerate boredom. If you want to make money and be excited at the same time, the stock market is the wrong place. Why not try a casino? Now imagine John White, who is in his mid-30s. Since he began working, he's managed to stash $100,000 in the S&P 500, which returns about 10% a year. Now, let's assume John White never invests another penny in the stock market, although he should if he wants a bigger return or to retire early. Here's what his return would look like over the years. In year 1, after investing the $100K, his return would only be $10,000, which is something but not going to change your life. By year 5, your money would have grown to $161,000, bringing you a total return of $61,000. By year 10, your money will have more than doubled, leaving you with $259,000, a huge amount of money, but you are not going to quit your job for that. By year 15, things start getting interesting. Your money has quadrupled to $417,000. By year 20, your money has doubled almost 7 times to $672,000. By year 25, you have $1.08 million. If John White had kept investing more money during that time, by year 15, he probably would have had $1 million. The lesson there is that no matter how much you invest, the real compounding of your money begins to happen several years down the road. You probably think Warren Buffett, one of the greatest investors of all time, made his billions early, but the truth is surprising. Today, he is worth over $100 billion, yet roughly 90% of that came after his 65th birthday. In other words, most of his wealth built up 41 years after he began his professional investment career at the age of 24 with Benjamin Graham. That's why it's important to start early. If the best time to plant a tree was several years ago, the next best time is now. It's never too late as long as you start today. Number 5. They don't have a goal when investing. We all know that the end goal of investing is to make more money, which could help you retire or achieve other goals that require money. But make money is a vague goal. If you want to make money, you have to be more specific about your goals and how you plan to achieve them, since many investment strategies work. Your investing goal decides how aggressive you must be in the stock market, meaning what percentage of your income you put into investments. If you want to retire early, you need to save a lot more of your pay. If you're happy to wait until your 60s, you can get away with a much smaller percentage and let time and compound interest do the heavy lifting. To get this, let's use an example of 2 individuals, one whom I'll call Mr. Fire and the other Mr. Patience. Mr. Fire hates his job and just wants to retire early, not to do nothing, but so he can finally work on what he loves. Mr. Patience, on the other hand, is fine with his work and will want to maintain his standard of living while still benefiting from the stock market. They both have an annual household income of $100,000. Remember that historically, the S&P 500 has returned 10% annually. But due to inflation, let's take a conservative 7% return, assuming you would be withdrawing 4% yearly. For Mr. Fire, the early retirement movement would recommend that he invest about 40 to 50% of his income annually. Mr. Fire decides to invest 50% of $100,000, which is about $50,000 per year. If he continues with that for 15 years, he would have a portfolio of approximately $1.26 million. At a 4% withdrawal rate, that gives about $50,000 per year in retirement income, plus whatever other income he has. In case you are wondering why the 4% withdrawal rate, that's from a study that found that if you want the retirement money to last 30 years or more, that's the amount you can safely withdraw. Mr. Patience has decided to save and invest just 15% of his $100,000, which adds up to $15,000 per year. If he does that for 35 years, starting in his mid-20s and aiming to retire around 60, the portfolio grows to roughly $2.07 million. At 4%, he can safely withdraw about $82,900 per year. These 2 individuals knew what they wanted and chose a strategy that suited their goals and desires, and stuck to the strategy for several years. But investors who don't know what they want keep jumping from one strategy to another, one hot stock to another. At the end of the day, they end up with nothing. Number 6. They cannot invest unless someone else agrees with them. This does not mean you should always be trying to go against the crowd at all times. There are times when the crowd is right, and you would be foolish not to benefit from it because everyone else is doing it. It's like saying everyone is using a car, so I shouldn't use a car, which would be insanity. But if everyone is driving their car at Formula 1 speed, you will benefit greatly from avoiding the crowd. To make money in the stock market, you must be willing to go alone for long periods of time. Once you start investing, people will come at you with 1,000 reasons to sell. A can't-miss hot stock. A new opportunity. That sounds like a shortcut. They'll even try to rope you into Ponzi-style schemes. Don't fall for the noise. Jumping from one hot tip to the next doesn't make anyone rich. It usually means buying high, selling low, and the only person getting rich is your broker. So here's a simple rule. Invest only in what you understand. If something sounds too good to be true, it almost always is. There are no free lunches, and if you do find one, you'll probably have to work your ass off to claim it, which means it wasn't free after all. Now about time horizon. If you want to actually make money in the stock market, you need to be willing to hold for years. Think at least 5, and realistically, 15 or more. As Warren Buffett says, only buy something you'd be perfectly happy to hold if the market shut down for 10 years. That mindset protects you from panic and from chasing every shiny thing. And a final, important warning about Ponzi schemes. Avoid anything that requires you to recruit others to get paid. Ask yourself, what are they paying you with? Usually, it's the cash from the next person you bring in. That's not investing, that is a pyramid scheme. In summary, to avoid ending up broke like most investors, forget excitement. Ignore the noise. Invest with clarity, patience, and enough capital, and let time, not luck, do the heavy lifting.